Welcome back. Today I wanted to talk about selections and a little more in depth about our selection panel up here where we can load selections, save selections, grow selections. So we're going to talk about that and clear some of those things up. Most of you know that if we make a selection, we can add to it by holding down Shift. Right? That's no big deal. And we can, so I'll just bump that up into a new layer. And I'll turn this layer down. So there's a selection. And it's hard edged, right? It's very crisp and clear and clean. Now if we wanted to feather that edge, let's talk a little bit about feather. So if we wanted to feather, we can go right up here into this box and I will type in a feather of about 25. And I'll draw a similar selection, and you'll see now that rather than it being nice and crisp and clear, it's kind of rounded off. So when we feather, we're going to get selections like this, and a lot of times that's helpful to you. Sometimes you don't want a real sharp and crisp edge. Let's try it one more time, and we'll try to put a, how about if we put a 50 pixel feather on it, and I'll make a selection here, and it's getting more and more rounded. And there's a 50 pixel feather. Alright, so just be aware that you can feather your selections prior to duplicating the layer or making cutting that selection out or whatever. Alright, so we can also, I'm going to take this back to 0, and we can also feather selections with our ellipse tool. Okay, so if I wanted to deselect, I will hit Command D or Control D on a Windows. We all know that we can Option click and subtract from a selection. If I want to invert this selection, in other words, rather than capturing what's inside it, I want to invert it, I'll go up here to Select and I'll choose Inverse, and you'll see that the keyboard shortcut for that is Shift Command I. So I'll invert, and you know you have an inverted selection because of these marching ants out here. Okay. So if I were to bump that up to a new layer, this is what we would get. In other words, I copied this background and left that little crescent moon shape, let that be cut out. Alright, and some of you asked some questions, I know, about feathering and anti-aliasing on our puzzle. If we were to do this puzzle, or if we did puzzle pieces and I were to select this shape, I'll bump that up, turn the opacity down, and I'll create a shape here, subtract from that shape, I'll duplicate that layer up. And some of you are having trouble with this white line, and that is because we have it set to anti-alias, and that's going to give us a softer edge. In other words, it's going to kind of blend some of that. It's not going to be right up, it's going to want to try to make a softer edge on that. So that's why we were having that trouble with our puzzle pieces. Now let's try to do it without this anti-alias checked. And it's only going to be on your ellipses. So if I create a shape like this, bump that up into a new layer, create a new shape like this, subtract from it that first shape, bump that up, Now when we zoom in, since we didn't have anti-alias checked, now you'll see that when we move this, it's a much harder edge. It's not real soft, but you'll see that that piece tends to go back together a little tighter. So just remember, you can either have soft selections or you can have hard-edged selections. Now what if we want to select the entire layer? What's the keyboard shortcut for that? Let's see if we can go up here. We can go select all. Yep. And the keyboard shortcut for that is Command A, Control A on a PC. Command D to deselect. And what else? Invert. Shift Command I. Okay, Command D. Now let's say we wanted to select this background here. Or we wanted to select the hand. Sorry. How would we do that? Can we do that with simple primitive shapes or primitive selections? Well, let's try it. Let's just grab our rectangular marquee and let's just grab a selection. And let's try to go up here and we'll go under Select and we'll choose Grow. Okay, that did a pretty good job. So it selected everything in that blue background. Okay, a little bit of cleanup we'd have to do down here, but that's simply because we have some hair, some soft edges there. Okay, so in theory we have the background, but we want the hand selected. So all we have to do is, yep, that's right, go up here and say Select Inverse, and now we have the hand selected. Okay. Command D to deselect that. And let's try another technique. How about if we, and this is simple because we have a very similar background. Okay, so that does make some of these selection techniques a little easier. So we'll go Select and let's see what Similar does. Okay, looks like Similar got us a little bit closer down here, but overall, if I zoom in here, looks like it got pretty close. We could clean some of this up in Refine Edge. But it didn't select this up here. We've still got some areas that aren't selected, so what am I going to do? Yep, that's right. I'm going to grab my rectangular marquee, actually my ellipse marquee, and I'll hold down Shift. And now I've got that up there selected. We can go Shift Command I, and now we have the hand selected. Bump that up into a new layer and turn the opacity down. So you'll see that there's some areas that we're going to have to clean up, but that's perfectly fine. We could have handled a lot of that in our Refine Edge, but it does a pretty good job of selecting that, selecting the hand. So there you have it. We have, just by using our primitives, we were able to select that hand fairly quickly just by using the Grow and Similar commands in our selection process. And sometimes, let's go back and let's try doing it. Let's say we wanted to select the hand. Some of you may be saying, well, let's just try to do the hand with that technique. So let's just select. Now the difference is there are a lot more varying values inside the hand. So we may not be able to select it. So I'm just going to make some selections here. And then I'll go up under Select and we'll say Grow and see what that does. It does a pretty good job. It missed some areas. Let's go see what happens if we say Select Similar. About the same thing. So in this situation, since we have this nice solid blue background, it's better to select that background, and that's going to often be the case. It's better to select the inverse of what you're wanting to select, and then go ahead and invert that selection. Look at some other selection options that we have inside Photoshop. Let's say we wanted to put, say, a black background behind this, and we wanted it just to be a few pixels bigger than what the hand is. We can do that by loading this selection, and we can go up under Select, Modify, and we'll just say Expand, and it's going to bring up a dialog box. Well, how many pixels? How about if we say 10 pixels? We'll say OK. You'll see that our selection has grown. And then I'm just going to fill that with black. Oh yeah, see we have some leftover stuff up here. So that'd be a good way that you could tell whether or not you got everything, or if your selection was good. We're just going to select that up there, and we'll say hit delete. And we have a few down here. Alright, we can also load that selection, and we can go up here to Select, Modify, Contract. And let's say we'll contract it 10 pixels. And then I'll just put a quick curves adjustment layer on this, and we'll brighten it up a little bit. Okay, so now we see that we could either brighten it or we could darken it. Let's see which, we'll darken it. So we can kind of see that we can expand our selections and we can contract our selections. Alright, let's look at one more thing that we can do to modify our selections. So if I have this hand selected, how about if I go up here and we'll say Expand, and this time we'll take it 25 pixels, and this time we'll try to put a border around that. So if I go up under Select, Modify Border, it'll put 10 pixels on the inside, 10 pixels on the outside, or 5. So how about if we just say 5 pixels inside and out? We'll say OK. Now we have, you'll see that we have this little border, and I'll just put a black fill on that. So Command D to deselect, and there we have some effects to our image just by using simple selection techniques. We haven't used the pen tool, haven't used the magic wand, quick selection, haven't used color range. We've just used simple primitive selections, and we've been able to select this hand fairly accurately. And we couldn't really talk about selections without touching on saving selections. So if I have this selected, this hand, and I want to save this selection, once again we'll go up to our select window, I'll pull down to Save Selection, I'll name it, and we'll put it on a new channel. We'll say OK, and all of our selections that we save are going to be saved right here in our Channels panel. So anytime you create a selection, it's going to create this little mask in our channels, and you'll see it there named Hand. And I think that is about it. If we once we save selections, we can also load selections. So if I deselect that and I come up here and say Load Selection, I'll pull down to my hand, choose the channel, the hand, and we can even have the option of inverting it here. So I'll just invert it. I'll say OK, and there we have a selection of our background. Alright, I think that is it. Play around with some of these features, and I will see you, yes, that's right, down the road in yet another video tutorial. Thanks for watching.